Wait a minute, haven't I seen you before? I know your face.
Get out, or shall I call my servant?
You're Norma Desmond. Used to be in silent pictures, used to be big.
I am big. It's the pictures that got small.
I knew there was something wrong.
They're dead. They're finished. There was a time in this business when they had the eyes of the whole wide world. But that wasn't good enough for them. Oh, no. They had to have the ears of the world, too. So they opened their big mouths, and out came talk. Talk, talk.
That's where the popcorn business comes in. You buy yourself a bag and plug up your ears.
Look at them in the front offices. The masterminds. They took the idols and smashed them. The Fairbankses, the Gilberts, the Valentinos. And who we got now? Some nobodies.
Don't blame me. I'm not an executive, just a writer.
You are. Writing words, more words. But you've made a rope of words and strangled this business. But there's a microphone right there to catch the last gurgles. And Technicolor to photograph the red swollen tongue.
You wake up the monkey.
Get out! Max!
Next time I'll bring my autograph album along. Or maybe a hunk of cement and ask for your footprint.
Welcome back to the show.
Welcome back to the show. We got a good one today.
Yes, indeed, listeners. My name's Pete.
And I'm Scott. And these are the movies that made us gay. Yay! Classics edition.
Yes, indeed. Golden Age.
This is a very special episode. This is kind of our first foray into classic cinema.
Is it now?
I mean, this is definitely the oldest movie that we've done.
Yeah.
I think that maybe Black Christmas
from the 70s.
From the 70s has been the oldest movie that we've done.
Wow, that's intense.
We have an unreleased Psycho episode. So, yeah, we watched Sunset Boulevard from 1950, directed by Billy Wilder.
Yes, indeed.
Released August 10th, 1950, with our good friend Dennis Griffin.
Dennis, welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show, Dennis.
Thanks for having me. And, to all those listeners out there in the dark, I'm so happy that I'm doing this. So it's one of my absolute favorite movies.
Awesome. Ours
Same
too.
here. Definitely.
Well, I mean, where do we even begin with Sunset Boulevard?
So we had a few movies that we were kind of bouncing back and forth.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Sunset Boulevard, and I'm like, oh, perfect. Like, this can be our first classic movie. I love this movie. It has a very special place in a lot of gay men's heart, as well as just moviegoers in general. So sure. I'm really excited to talk about it.
Yeah. Why don't we like to talk about our kind of introduction to these movies, Dennis, as our guest. Why don't you talk a little bit about your history with Sunset Boulevard? Do you remember where you first saw it?
I do. So for me, this movie particularly is my Desert Island movie. It's a movie that I could watch on a daily basis and never get tired of it.
Yeah.
Ever.
Same.
I know it word for word. It still surprises me. It still chokes me up at times, makes me laugh at times. So the first time thinking back, the first time I probably watched this was probably shown to me by a first boyfriend, is what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So, young gay, out in the world, living in West Hollywood,
mm-hmm.
and having an older boyfriend who was like, here, I'm going to show you a movie. And it was Sunset Boulevard. So I'm thinking that's what it was. It was probably the first time I saw it. Was probably, a first boyfriend showing it to me.
Right.
And really showing it to me because of kind of the camp factor. And then, of course, being that it's such a brilliant film.
Yeah. Have you seen the Broadway musical version?
I've not seen it in person. I've seen clips here and there. And it's, it's Andrew Lloyd Webber. So
yes.
that, and you can take that as you want.
Yeah.
You can either take that as, oh my God, I love Andrew Lloyd Webber, or it's ridiculous because it's Andrew Lloyd Webber. So there's those aspects to the Broadway musical. And there's some amazing songs in it, but yeah. I think the Broadway musical is an interesting take on this story.
Yeah, actually, you're absolutely right about the whole Andrew Lloyd Webber aspect. We were just doing some research today. You know, we watched the movie last night. We have an old DVD that has some, you know, documentary stuff on there, and we were just watching clips from the musical, the Glenn clips. We didn't watch any Patty clips.
You gotta watch the Glenn clips.
But you know, we were listening to With One Look, which is the big song that she sang, that Norma sings from the scene that we just listened to when she first meets Joe. And we're listening to it, and Scott goes, "Why does this sound familiar?" And I was like, "Because it's Andrew Lloyd Webber. It just sounds like Phantom."
It just sounds like Phantom. It just sounds like a song that Christine would have sung in Phantom.
Yeah. I remember in my high school drama class, it was taught by Brother Cecil, and it was probably my favorite class in high school. And we were probably reading Romeo and Juliet or some Shakespeare, and that was around the time that the show was first coming to, or being announced that it was coming to LA, and it was all the drama with Faye Dunaway's casting and subsequent firing and all of that. And
could you imagine?
Oh my God.
It would have been legendary for both good and bad.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, who knows what the thought process was behind that?
It makes sense in theory.
Well, the reason she was fired was because she can't sing, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
So did they think to ask, hey, maybe
she would style really well as Norma, but bitch can't sing.
Yeah. But Brother Cecil kind of, I feel like he, took me under his wing because we were kindred spirits in drama class in this school full of rough and tumble East Side kids. He asked me if I liked musicals, and I was like, I think so. And I told him that I'd seen Phantom of the Opera, and he's like, well, Sunset Boulevard is coming to town. And we would talk about movies a lot in this drama class. And he told me about the movie, and he gave me the tape of the soundtrack to the musical, having not seen it or the movie. And I listened to it, and I was kind of like, this is weird. It's very, it was super Andrew Lloyd Webber. I was in high school. I was like, I want to listen to Smashing Pumpkins or whatever. But it always had made this impression of, I should see this movie. Brother Cecil really likes it, and all of the buzz about the show going on. And finally, when I did grab a DVD of it in my early 20s, I was just like, this is amazing. This performance is crazy, but so memorable, and I just fell in love with Norma and Gloria Swanson and that house, and every aspect of William Holden just being so dreamy in this.
Oh, amazing.
Not really knowing him from anything, maybe Lucy, I remembered him from Lucy, I remembered the name, and then just kind of being blown away by every aspect of this movie, and just, I think I just went out and bought it right after I rented it because I was like, no, I need to own this. It's too good. Scott, when did you first see it?
So I remember when I was a kid, do you remember the AFI Institute's Top 100 American Films? That they would do TV specials, and they would cart in all of these celebrities, filmmakers, directors, old Hollywood stars, and they would all talk about all of these famous movies that ended up on the top 100. And I remember them talking about this movie and just kind of thinking, mental note, I need to watch this. Because, of course, you've heard the I'm ready for my close-up Mr. DeMille, but you don't really know the context of it. Lines that Norma is saying, but you might not be familiar with Sunset Boulevard. So I think I didn't watch this movie until I was about 20 years old, so about the same age as you two, and I was going to school at the time at Eastern Washington University in Cheney in Washington, and there was just nothing to do. So I would just always go to the public library on campus and rent old movies. Like, that's where I rented, like, Antonioni's Blow Up, some, like fancy schmancy, like Godard movies. Just kind of me trying to fancy myself like a cinephile.
Right.
Because I was just thinking, like, I just need to watch all the classics. And that's where I rented Sunset Boulevard. And I watched it in my dorm room.
Yeah.
And I loved it. Yeah. And it's still a movie that I go back to a lot.
Yeah, I think I watch it every year at least.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I kind of find myself watching it around Halloween.
Well, 'cause it's a horror film to a point.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that last night. Brother Cecil in high school also showed us Streetcar Named Desire. And he really emphasized, that the ending of that movie, she essentially, loses her mind, and just how tragic it is. And, at the end of this movie, it's like, it's this iconic, she's walking down the stairs and she's just kind of lost it. But she's killed a man. Like, she has just murdered someone, and the police and, the media and everybody's there. And it just ends. And you're just like, what's going to happen to Norma?
Right.
It is
and
scary.
That's what's so great about, I think, this movie. Well, no spoilers, is that the movie opens with him being dead, floating in the pool. So, and I don't know if you read about the original way they shot it was that when the movie opened, it was him on a slab at the coroner's office and his body talking to other dead people. And there's this whole conversation with dead people in the morgue. And I guess when they previewed it, like in Illinois, somewhere in the middle of Ohio, they previewed this movie. The audience was like in laughter. And so they're like, well, that's not going to work. And so that's why they open with him floating in the pool.
Yeah.
That was interesting.
That beautiful shot of William Holding in the pool, too, that it's shot below and you see him floating.
Right.
I think that I think his body floating in the pool and kind of his character acknowledging that that's me in there and all that gives it this very like film noir-ish quality, that the rest of the tone of the movie you kind of forget about, but really, when the bookends of how it starts and how it ends are so tragic. And then you just have all this craziness in between.
I remember when I was a teenager and watching American Beauty, I think I remember my stepdad just calling out, this movie is fully ripping off Sunset Boulevard in its opening scene.
Oh, that's right.
Because American Beauty opens up with dead Lester and his voiceover.
Yeah, I never thought of that either.
And stealing from Billy Wilder.
Dennis, you and I both grew up in the greater Los Angeles area. I watched this movie, and I do not work in the entertainment industry other than being on a podcast, but I have a lot of friends who do and did. And, when we were kids, that's kind of what we did in our early 20s. That's where we went out for fun, was to go into Hollywood and all that. So seeing all of these locations and seeing all this movie business talk, I don't know. I just always felt like, oh, I get this a little bit more because I'm from here. Did you ever get that when you watched this kind of movie?
Completely.
Right.
I mean, being a pretentious little gay boy in living and growing up in Los Angeles, and then in my early 20s living in West Hollywood.
Yeah.
And being shown this film, and then, just kind of the enigma of Hollywood itself, and the machine that it is. I mean, every time I drive by, the Bronson Gates for Paramount, I always think of Sunset Boulevard.
You always think of this scene
because you had the You always think of that scene.
Yeah.
So, or if you drive by, where Schwab's pharmacy was, which I believe was like Sunset and Vine area.
I believe Schwab's is where the Sunset 5 used to be, in that little shopping area of right at the beginning of the Sunset Strip where TJ's is now. I think that's where that space was. Just down the street from the chateau.
Yeah.
Right. So there is that kind of mystique of Hollywood when you watch this film.
I think the actual apartment building that Joe Gillis, the William Holden character, I think that's still there. The Aldo Nito apartment.
They're still there.
Just right off of what is it, off Franklin?
I used to have that apartment when we first started going out. That was just in those hills. It's right below the reservoir.
Yeah, and there's a sign that says Aldo Nito. Yeah, just a lot of Hollywood today looks so crazy different than it did when we were like young and going out. There's all these buildings popping up, multi-use buildings or whatever, but there's still a lot of it that does look exactly the same. There's that shot where he goes to grab his car from the garage or from the parking lot.
That parking lot's still there.
And it looks like you know exactly where he is,
Yeah, that's like the Multibon. I think that's like the Multibon Theater.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Which is like, I think, Argyle or something.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly where that is, where he's parked his car behind the shoe shine shop. And then the Alto Nito, I think, it's right there below Franklin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so crazy how... And we were the type of kids... I mean, I was the type of kid that when we would see movies that were set in L.A., we would kind of go out and look for the locations and just, try and track things down. And this movie just really lent itself to that. Norma's house, unfortunately, none of us have ever seen.
We're always, whenever we're like driving to the Grove or something to go see a movie, we're always obsessed with that area of Wilshire that borders Hancock Park where her house was. And I believe that John Paul Getty's one of his wives bought the estate. And I think it was just vacant at the time when they were shooting this movie in 1949 or 1950. And then they later shot Rebel Without a Cause there, and then it was torn down in the late 50s. Probably just a year and a half after they shot Rebel there. And there's even... they built that pool for Sunset Boulevard. I saw on the DVD. Huh. But it couldn't hold water. Like, it was just... I don't think it could really be... like a functioning pool, even though there is a scene with
they filled it up with water, but they didn't have it connected to like a pump to circulate water. So,
and there's that scene in Rebel where they're hanging out by the pool too.
Is it empty in Rebel Without a Cause?
It's empty in Rebel. Yep. And now
I've yet to Rebel Without a Cause.
Oh,
and now I'm gonna have to watch it because knowing that it's the same, same shooting location. Now I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, and to see the exterior of the house in color.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
that would be cool too.
I believe now it is like a gas station in that area of Wilshire.
No, I think it's like a building, just like some weird office building.
Oh, they said on the DVD that it was a gas station.
I don't think that's correct because I used to work right up there. But so we have to talk about Gloria Swanson.
Yes.
And this insane, incredible performance that she delivers in this movie. I just don't feel like... Well, I mean, obviously you couldn't get a performance like that now, but there's just something about actors that came from the studio system that they all kind of knew how to do a lot of things. They weren't just actors. Like, they could dance, they could sing, or they could play an instrument, or... do all of those things. And Gloria Swanson kind of showed in this movie, even though the whole idea was that she just came from silent pictures and Norma's career was based on her face, but she really did know how to do a lot. Like there's really fun stuff that she gets to showcase in this movie with her performance. And I love how beautiful she is, how teeny tiny she looks next to William Holden. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't say enough about Gloria Swanson, and all those pictures of her around the house that are actual pictures of her from the 20s and 30s.
That's what's so crazy about her in this specific movie is that they used her old films and they used her old photos, and it, the role of Norma Desmond wasn't really Gloria Swanson. I mean, she was much different of a person. But to use all that, be able to use all that for the role is so crazy.
Yeah.
And then to do little things like them kind of showcasing her comedic timing and things like that in it are just so great. It's what makes the performance so amazing.
I was reading that when they were writing it, it's speculated that kind of a big inspiration for Norma was Mary Pickford, because she sort of had this reclusive reputation. And also a lot of silent film stars started to have mental disorders around this time. That was kind of gossiped a lot in magazines. It would have been crazy to picture this movie with Mae West and Marlon Brando, because I believe that Mae West was maybe showing the script or offered to it. She wanted too many script demands, and Billy Wilder said no. So yeah, Mae West as Norma Desmond, that would have been wild.
Yeah, there was a lot of women that were approached for the role. Greta Garbo was approached and said absolutely not.
Norma Shear.
And Pola Negra, who they thought her Polish her accent was way too thick for it to pull it off, so they couldn't use her. So that it's fascinating that they zeroed in on Gloria Swanson
and
for it.
Supposedly, George Cukor recommended her to Billy Wilder.
It's what I find fascinating is that, and they say it in the movie. She's supposed to be this washed up movie star. She was so big, 20 years ago. She made tons of movies. But Joe says to her at one point, she's 50.
Yeah.
50.
Yeah.
And that's the thing about how people age now, as opposed to, even when you watch the Golden Girls, they're all in their mid-50s. They're not retirees in the Golden Girls. They're all working except for Ma. They all have jobs and are have not retired yet, and they are in their mid-50s when that show starts. And in this, Norma is 50.
Just to give a little perspective, Nicole Kidman, I just Googled it, is 53 years old.
There you go.
So yeah.
Well, look at J-Lo.
Yeah.
In Hustlers.
Yeah.
She's 50 in Hustlers. A 50-year-old woman in the movie Hustlers. The equivalent of Gloria Swanson in Sunset Boulevard. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
The differences,
Yeah.
of how definitely I think the film industry has come way much further in that acceptance of women in their, but it's just it's nuts.
Yeah.
But
and I mean, she does to an extent. She does look a little bit more mature. Like if you were to put Gloria Swanson in 1950 standing next to J-Lo of today, they wouldn't look like they were the same age. But at the same time, she doesn't look like a little old lady.
She has beautiful skin.
Yeah, she has great skin. She's very glamorous. And what I find interesting is about Norma and Gloria is the whole idea that when the talkies came around, a lot of silent film stars fell by the wayside. And, if you watch Singing in the Rain, they would have you think that it was because their acting styles didn't match up, right? They were not necessarily remembering lines, or they were just talking gibberish, or their voices were crazy, or they had thick Eastern European accents like Pola Negra. But Gloria Swanson's amazing in this. She's got a great voice. She's got that mid-Atlantic delivery. So I wonder why it was that
she worked a little bit, but not a lot though.
Yeah, maybe it was just the roles kind of dried up too because she got to a certain age. So it wasn't just that she didn't make the transition, but it was a combination of her aging out of the system as well, right?
Yeah, and then she landed on a role that she just ended up either getting typecast as, and she just never found anything else that she felt like she could be that could like top it too.
Sure.
I mean, she was just fully playing herself in Airport 1975 in the 70s.
Oh, you mean after Sunset Boulevard?
After Sunset Boulevard, yes.
I have to say,
Now, I wonder if it would have been different if she had won the Academy Award.
Oh, we'll have a
That
big
year.
discussion with that later too.
We'll definitely get into that at some point. But,
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's... And William Holden was 31 at the time.
that's insane. He looks
Given
he looks 40.
Given major daddy vibes in this movie.
Oh, my... I mean, in one of the things I love in this movie is the very kind of subtle nods to their relationship. That they're full on,
Yeah, we were
sex.
talking about that earlier today. I was saying, like, I guess it's the implication, and this is a movie from the 50s, so they're not going to show them going to bed together, but in a lot of the special features that we were watching and in a lot of things that I read on, IMDb trivia, a lot of times people refer to Joe Gillis as a gigolo.
Yeah.
And actors turning down the role, Fred McMurray turning down the role because he didn't want to play a gigolo.
Montgomery Clift
And
turned it, I believe, was cast and then backed out.
And I'm just thinking it's interesting because to modern audiences, they don't spell it out that they're sleeping together, but clearly they are. And he's just not comfortable with it.
I mean, one of the yummy scenes with him is when he's swimming.
Oh my God.
And he gets out of the pool. And he's got, the furry chest and his body is like tight.
Yeah.
And you're like, damn. And normally on all like the suits and stuff, I mean, he's a good looking man, but then you see him with his shirt off and you're like, wow. And she's so comfortable with drying him off that you're like, let's hope we
Or even when she's doing her little Follies number and then she jumps on the couch where Joe is lying down and she just like jumps right next to him and they're so close and intimate in that scene.
Yeah, exactly. She kind of snuggles in next to him and you're like, okay.
Oh,
I see what's going on.
Oh, they are fucking.
Totally.
Yeah. And the way, because at first he's very much like, oh, stop saying we, there's no we. But, when he says stuff about when the repo guys finally do take his car and he's like, I need a car. Like, when you can't have a car, you can't not have a car in Los Angeles. It's like getting your legs cut off. And she's like, oh, we have a car.
We have a car. Yep.
And it's like that she's just thinking of them as this like this coupled, this coupled unit. I love that car, by the way.
So cool.
Oh, what is it?
It's an Asada Fraschini.
Scada. I still can't say it correctly.
So you were looking up about the car today.
I did. I was looking up. I was fascinated by this car because I was like, what the hell is she saying? Like, what kind of car? I've never heard of it. So Asada Fraschini is an Italian car company. They were totally like a luxury car company for the 20s through about the 50s.
Like you probably had to request one for it to get made.
Well, not only that, they were all completely handmade like Rolls-Royce. And their big thing was that like no two would be the same. So
that's so cool.
There would be no two Asada Fraschini car owners that had the same model because every car is customized. And she tells,
so would like the today's equivalent be like a DeLorean?
Yeah, but I feel like DeLoreans were a little bit more cookie cutter than that.
Right. Yes.
So when she tells him it's an Asada Fraschini, I paid $28,000 cash, and you're like, what the hell? Okay, so the model of the car that she has, because they were so unique, you can look up the car, and it has its own Wikipedia page. So the car was from 1929. It was in a limousine style. And if she paid $28,000 in 1929, that car would have been $416,000.
Wow! Oh my! I was wondering what the modern equivalent of price would be. That's amazing.
The whole thing was upholstered in leopard skin and had one of those gold-plated car phones. That's what Joe says. The Sunset Boulevard car has been on display at the Museo Nazionale dell'Automobile in Italy since 1972, and Norma Desmond's initials are still emblazoned on the rear doors of the car. And you can see it when Max opens the door. You can see the ND stenciled onto the car. Yeah. And it was owned in the 80s by the entrepreneur who founded Domino's Pizza, but it has since been donated to this Italian auto museum.
That's amazing.
So Norma's spending $400,000 on a car in 1928, but she owns 4 blocks downtown. She's got oil and
Bakersfield pumping and pumping. Love that line.
I'm rich.
That's another really great scene with her. Or line delivery. It's a really great line delivery. She says, "I'm rich." She's a little tipsy from the champagne, and I've watched this movie with tons of different friends, and our mutual friend Marlene. Every time we've watched the movie, that's her absolute favorite scene in the whole movie, and it's the way she says when she says, "And I have oil in Bakersfield pumping," and she pumps her foot up and down.
Yeah.
And just that's Marlene's favorite. Part of the movie.
We got to get Marlene on this show.
Yeah,
one of these days.
Definitely. That is an amazing scene, but it kind of gives you a little bit of backstory on. Oh, okay, because maybe you think. On the one hand, you could think, well, maybe Norma's just kind of land rich and she just has this house, because the house seems to be kind of in decay from the outside. The tennis court is sagging, the pool's empty, the palm trees are all kind of falling down.
She just doesn't pay a yard guy.
Yeah, she just doesn't bother to pay because she's not having parties anymore.
Right, and when you only have Max working the entire house,
he can't
cleaning out the pool.
Yeah, he's not climbing those palm trees, pulling out the dead, the dead palm fronds. Yeah, for sure.
This house always reminds me of when I go on walks in old San Marino. I do my little loop, and I look at some of the entryways of these old fucking houses in San Marino, and just how they're just sort of open to the air, of just their courtyard into the house. So cool.
Right.
Yeah, we were noticing last night, I guess I'm assuming this is kind of like a Spanish-style house, and we were noticing last night that the front door is just kind of like this villa. It's just a gate. There's not like a proper door. It's just a gate that Max opens and closes. Unless we just can't see it, and it's always open. But
I think you're right. I can't remember if there's glass within that gate.
I don't think so. It looks like it's just a wrought iron kind of gate. Yeah.
Which is crazy because today people would be worried of all pollution and dust and all this crap, flying into their living room.
Yeah.
But it's probably true. It probably was just open. It was just a gate.
Yeah.
That opened up into the living room.
And at the time, Hollywood and that part of Sunset Boulevard where it was supposed to be set was probably a lot more rural, just big fancy houses. So you didn't really have to worry.
The foothills of the Hollywood Hills.
Yeah.
Kind of going into where now UCLA is.
I'm wondering if it's there or if it's kind of more like West Hollywood, Beverly Hills area. I don't know exactly where it's supposed to be set, that block that the house is supposed to be. I don't know.
Yeah, I know it was on Wilson.
Yeah, the actual one was right,
it's on Wilson.
Yeah.
But the house itself, I'm thinking, or, in the movie, the block of Boulevard, that is, it's that windy area above UCLA.
Yeah.
That's kind of heading into Bel Air.
Sort of where the Playboy Mansion is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Totally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about, there's when Joe first comes to the house and he sees Norma, and we discover that Norma's pet chimp has died. I am obsessed with the backstory of goddamn Norma Desmond and this chimp. She's just been living in this house with this chimpanzee that would probably like eat off your face. I want to see that movie.
And I love his line where he says, you know, the great grandson of King Kong.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, he had
and
to
the
be
bedroom, that first shot when he's walking into the bedroom, he's following her into the bedroom,
Mm-hmm.
and you see the chimp is on the massage table covered in a shawl, and there's that crazy like gondola bed.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the room is dripping in like sashes
Mm-hmm.
and curtains and all this stuff, and it's just such an amazing, you know, scene. And yeah, the chimp, and that, you know, he liked to poke at fires with a stick. Like that.
I want the coffin to be white, especially lined with satin.
And then a guy comes and drops off this baby coffin, and they bury the chimp in the yard.
Like it's an everyday thing.
Yes.
That image of Joe looking out the window and Norma standing there, and doesn't she have an umbrella? Because doesn't
She
start
has
to,
a candelabra.
she has a candelabra.
She has a candelabra, and she's helping him carry the
Max,
casket.
yeah.
And then Max just gets in the ground,
Just
and he
jumps in the ground.
and he puts the coffin in the ground.
I need to get like a snapshot of that, like tattooed on my chest. That is amazing. Those shots.
You know, and they can't be zoned for that.
Yeah,
you know.
No, Norma doesn't care. That's what she says to Joe.
You can't
I
just
don't care. I'm Norma Desmond. I don't care.
Yeah. Now, would she have the chimp like in a tuxedo? You know,
I think so.
Like Max matching with Max, like in a tuxedo, like smoking a cigar.
I mean, someone down the line. I mean, this could either be a really good thing or a really bad thing. Someone should do a prequel.
Oh my god,
Norma and this chimp.
They're
like so we have some backstory on
Yeah.
the, you know, that her living with this chimp and Max, and
yeah.
you know, the four other husbands, and
I mean, maybe like
know.
Rudolph Valentino gave her the chimp. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it may or may not.
Right.
It may or may not have worn tuxedos, but it definitely smoked cigars. You know that chimp smoked cigars. It's the 50s. Like, come on. Yeah, I would like to see in a prequel Norma and the chimp and Max just like solving mysteries. Maybe I would.
Yeah.
I would like that.
the Desmond Mystery Hour. that
Just
really.
Max chauffeuring the chimp and Norma in the Hollywood Hills. Them just sitting in the back
Back of this car. Yeah. The other thing about going back to the car really quickly, the Asada Fraschini. He mentions that it has a car phone, a gold-plated car phone. But what I saw and what I looked up in research is that it's to call the driver because the car is so big that there was a glass divider between the front seat and the cab. And the cab was so big that you would have had to have leaned forward for Max to hear you. And she's back there almost like on a couch. It's like a limousine setup. So she could talk into this little phone handset. And if you notice, Max had that little horn next to him that he was just like a trumpet. He was kind of leaned his head over and talked into that. And that sound would go into the little handset that she had. So it was a phone from the front seat to the back seat because the car was that long. So, because Scott was just like, a car phone? What the hell? But yeah, it was just,
whoever owned that would spend that much money on a car like that.
yeah.
There's no they're going to scooch
No.
themselves up to that divider.
Right?
Yeah.
We're in the way back of that thing.
Where's the finest men's shop in Los Angeles?
Yeah.
Let's go there. Yeah. She's not doing that. She's
No.
not going to take the time to do that. So, yeah, having a gold-plated car phone.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy.
I love the attendant at the men's shop. The suit salesman
Amazing.
is like my favorite character in
he's
the
great.
movie. It's like, since the lady's paying for it, get the Vicuna.
So, when I watch this movie now, and I've lived in Los Angeles for 10 years now, so I'm a transplant. Much like Joe, even though I didn't really care to make it in the entertainment industry, but I kept wondering, me from 10 years ago, or maybe me even 10 years from now, maybe I would just leave Pete. But if I was offered this situation from Norma, like, am I taking it?
Would you do it?
And I'm kind of thinking, like, I think I would take it. Like, it looks like a pretty good deal to me.
Yeah, that is a setup that you want.
Yeah.
I mean, what does he have to lose? His car's getting repossessed. He's pretty much like cut ties with his agent after he told him to like screw off for not giving him a loan. He's ready to go back to Ohio and to go sit at the at the newspaper in Ohio. He's ready to just leave Hollywood behind, and now he's a kept man, gold-plated cigarette case, mad about the boy. I love the inscription in the cigarette case.
I mean, this is like some like sugar daddy fantasies.
Yeah, for sure.
Fully.
And
if I had some rich old gay man who works, was in the Hollywood industry, approached me and was like, "Help me, write this script," I would be a heartbeat.
Oh yeah,
I would drop everything on it. Sure, no problem.
Oh, you want to keep that scene in? It's back.
Oh, we have that clip. I love this. Is one of my favorite moments of the movie.
Oh yes, we do. Let's take a listen to this one.
What's that?
Just a scene I threw out.
Which scene?
The one where you go to the slave market. It's better to cut directly to John the Baptist.
Cut away from me.
Well, honestly, it's a little too much of you. They don't want you in every scene.
They don't. Then why do they still write me fan letters every day? Why do they beg me for my photographs? Why? Because they want to see me, Norma Desmond. Put it back.
Okay.
These piles of handwritten script pages.
Of this, like, historical biblical epic.
Oh.
Yeah.
And
is there enough story in Salome to have like a whole movie? Like, I don't know. I kind of know the story about like John the Baptist and all of that, but she was kind of a minor character in that whole situation.
Yeah, it's true. And, she dances the dance of the seven veils. And she, demands his head on a platter.
You have to give Norma credit. I mean, she's like all of the huge A-list actresses now that have just created their own projects to stay relevant.
Right.
That she was onto something, like she's writing her own material.
Yeah. She was very...
She was the Drew Barrymore over time.
Or like Reese Witherspoon, she has her big production company.
Wow. I love when he's like, and you'll play Salome, of course, and she's like, who else?
Right, exactly. And and you think back to her, they later on, of course she says it's going to be DeMille that's going to direct it. So of course that's what she's going to write is some biblical epic. That's what he was known for, was and that's what you see when they go to Paramount and he's filming. I can't remember what he's filming, but I
think it's Samson and Delilah.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. So clearly that was the big thing today. A film like that, it would be made by Kirk. So
Kirk Cameron.
Well, I mean, like Ridley Scott tries to dust off the old like sword and sandals biblical epic, but it just doesn't quite land like it used to. Exodus, Gods and Kings.
No. Yeah, not quite. This whole situation with writing Salome, sending it to, sending Max off to Paramount to drop it off personally to Mr. DeMille, and the mix-up with them calling the house. So she thinks it's Cecil B. DeMille calling her about the script. So she goes down to... I love when she gets so upset that someone else is calling and that it's not Mr. DeMille calling her directly. And she gets so pissed off. Right. And she's just like, I'll go, and I'm good and ready. And then it cuts to to Joe's voiceover, and he goes, "About 3 days later, she was good and ready." I thought that was really fun. I thought that was really funny.
She puts on that turban and she's good to go.
Yeah, I do like her look when she goes to the studio.
And what's
with
great,
the veil.
And what's so interesting about when she goes to the studio is that this was still at a time in like the late 40s when all of those old guys still work there that would just work on sets. They would work the lights. She's recognized by the guy that works at the gate, and he's like, well, obviously Norma Desmond does not need like a drive-on. She can just go.
Yeah. There's some really good. There's some really good extras and background people that they fill out with kind of some older people to make it, seem like, well, these are the ones that would recognize her. The interesting thing is, and we have a little clip from that we'll play in a second, but I just want to say the interesting thing is for kind of modern audiences, when we see Joe hanging out with people his own age at the party, I'm assuming they're still all supposed to be youngsters, right? And they look young, but
to a point.
to a point, you know what I mean? Like, again, I don't know, if this movie were made today and it was about, young people in Hollywood and some young scriptwriter, it'd be like children in the scene.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, exactly.
But the people in that New Year's Eve party just having, this gay old time, they just because it's from 1950, they look so much more mature than we think young, carefree young people.
And I mean, film had only been Hollywood had only been 30 years old at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So still
crazy.
Kind of Hollywood in its second phase.
Yeah. The studio system is kind of hard to wrap your head around, for the average person to think about actors being tied to one studio only, and, how they were just they were like factories that were just putting out a product. And somebody...
And that scene, the New Year's Eve scene, party scene, is the one scene in the whole movie that kind of, I don't want to say shocks me, but it kind of takes me out of the mood.
Yeah.
Because it's so austere, and you have, the scene of her New Year's Eve party where it's just the two of them, and she has rented an entire, orchestra and all this setup, and then he goes to this cramped little apartment where there's literally 100 people shoved into this. And they're like singing songs and laughing hysterically, and it's such a shock. Yeah, because you go from one extreme to that.
Going back to the New Year's Eve scene,
like it's in another movie.
What do you think those girls were doing on the phone?
Those two girls laughing on the phone.
What? Like,
I can't.
Like prank phone calls? Like what? Are they on like a dirty hotline or something? I don't know.
And their laughter is so ridiculous.
Yeah. They're like on a party line just listening to people have conversations and just like laughing or something.
Yeah, and that scene is crazy because he shows up, it's packed with people, they're singing the song called Buttons and Bows. Yeah. Is what's being played at the piano. And it was the Oscar winning song for that previous year.
Oh, sure. So it would have been like a top 40 hit of the day.
It would have been like a top 40 hit, and they were singing it. And in my research of this movie, the guy who's playing the piano is the guy who wrote the song.
Oh,
so
sure.
Those are like the lyricist and the songwriter are like there. Of course they would be there because they've been the ones, and
this is an industry party. Song.
Right. It's an industry party, so...
That's funny. I never knew that. And that's stuff that gets lost to time, and like we never would have put that connection because I kind of feel like Buttons and Bows sounds familiar. But
audiences in 1950 would have recognized it.
Yeah, that's like a fun little treat for them.
Yeah. Which is a trip. And then you have the two girls laughing on the phone. You've got the punch that's made out of what did she say? Like you put
cough syrup,
a couple cough drops, and some lukewarm liquid water, and it's kind of a nuts scene. The scene is kind of crazy, and then there's a lot of like jokey lines in it. Like everyone's like pull a laugh. It's a trip.
Yeah. The way the friends kind of interact with each other, they're trying to be very like, I don't know, sarcastic or just very, I don't know, they're putting on this kind of like jokey thing with each other, and it's just to kind, I don't know, to kind of give us this idea that they're all pals and they all go way back or whatever. I do like Joe's interactions and his relationship with, what's the character's name?
Betty Schaefer, played by Nancy Olson.
We love Betty Schaefer.
I love that character too.
I love this girl.
And then Green, which is her fiance.
Yeah, from Dragnet.
From Dragnet, exactly, yeah. Artie Green, and he's kind of like the, yucking it up kind of, character in it. He always has a sarcastic thing to say, or, but Betty, what a great role. Because she's like the one grounded character in the whole movie.
Yeah. And she sort of represents, in a very bitter movie about Hollywood, about the good that this town does have and people that make movies.
Yeah.
Like someone who's very sincere. She wants to be a screenwriter. She has been working in Hollywood and on the movie set since she was a child. And she just seems very pure. And it's the type of character that the script really needs. That I think that if you were to cut Nancy Olson's character out, it would just seem too angry. That she just sort of lightens it a little bit.
And she's kind of the opposite of Norma,
yes.
In that, Norma, it's all about appearance, and it's all about likability and her fans. And then you have someone like Betty, who has that whole speech about, I was going to be an actress, and they gave me screen tests, and they had me fix my nose, but then they loved my nose after I got it fixed. But then, but they didn't like my acting, and how she kind of like is okay with being behind the scenes. And that's kind of an interesting flip from Norma, who's all about being in front of the camera. And you have Betty, who's perfectly fine being behind the camera.
Yeah, for sure.
What were you, child actress?
No, I was born just 2 blocks from the studio, right on Lemon Grove Avenue. My father was head electrician here till he died. Mother still works in wardrobe.
Second generation, huh?
Third. Grandma did stunt work for Pearl White. I come from a picture family. Naturally, they expected me to become a great star. So I had 10 years of dramatic lessons, diction, dancing. Then the studio made a test. Well, they didn't like my nose. Slanted this way a little. So I went to a doctor and had it fixed. They made more tests and they were crazy about my nose. Only they didn't like my acting.
Nice job.
It should be. It cost me $300.
That's the saddest thing I ever heard.
Well, not at all. It taught me a little sense. I got a job in the mailroom, worked up to the stenographic. Now I'm a reader.
Come clean, Betty. At night you weep for those lost close-ups, those gala openings.
Not once. What's wrong with being on the other side of the cameras? It's really more fun.
I can't even imagine what a 1950s nose job entailed.
The 40s nose job.
That just sounds dangerous.
Just saw that thing down.
$300.
Yeah. Did you get it in Mexico? Yeah, we love
nuts.
We love the Betty Schaefer character.
I love that her opening scene. She just reads him to filth on the script.
Yeah,
right, with Sheldrick in the agent's, or not the producer's office.
Yeah. It kind of gives you this idea, too, of this whole studio system where at this time, they're not really interested in quality, right? I feel like it was more so quantity and what's going to make them a buck, the studio, right? Because Joe is just like, screenwriters at that time were just, banging them out. And they weren't all trying to write, Gone with the Wind. They were just trying to get something sold and made. And all of that talk about how his movie started off on a submarine, or it ended up on a submarine after all the rewrites. Talking about how it's a baseball script, and then suddenly ends up on a submarine, and
And that's where it was. And you have Sheldrick, the producer, who's, he's downing Alka-Seltzer. He's highly stressed out.
Yeah.
He doesn't care about the script at all. He just wants something that's going to make money.
Yep.
And, the look on Joe Gillis's face when he's like, Sheldrick's like, well, do you see this as a Betty Hutton film? Do you think this could be something Betty Hutton could do? And just the look of just defeat and disgust. And here's the script, this amazing script that I'm writing, and you've just, completely brought it down to, being a throwaway film,
Yeah. But yeah, I do love all this stuff with Betty Schaefer and Joe on the lot. All this stuff.
She sort of reminds him of what he used to love about being a screenwriter, too.
Yeah.
And like creating something.
The mystery, though, because he keeps, to her, he's popping in every now and then. He shows up at the New Year's Eve party and he leaves in a hurry. He walks into Schwab's while they're just having, a sandwich at the counter, and he's in a tux.
And
again.
She gets weird contact numbers for him, too, where she calls the house not really knowing where he is.
Mm-hmm.
All the stuff with her calling the house is amazing. When you see Norma on the phone talking to Betty, she has this crazed look in her eye. I forget what she's telling her. But
do you know where he lives?
Yeah.
Do you know what he lives on? Do you know with? Yeah, she's she's approaching. Well, she's bonkers.
Yeah, at this point. Yeah, for sure. We talked a little bit about it earlier, and we kind of skipped over it. So I do want to go back to Norma at Paramount.
Yes.
Before that, there's the clip that I want to play. Is it of Norma when they're watching one of her own silent movies in her living room, like movie theater? Which is, come on. Nowadays, I feel like people put in home theaters.
Pretty common
thing.
If you go get like a McMansion in the Valley, it's probably going to have a home theater in it.
But I think in Norma Desmond's house, pulling up this oil painting that was given to her by some Nevada, what did he say? Some Nevada Chamber of Commerce. Yeah. And Max is just like pulling this velvet rope, and the painting rises. And here comes Norma in her living room to watch one of her own movies, fully decked out.
Look like she's going to like the 1930 Academy Awards or something.
Yeah, she's wearing just like this beautiful blouse, like nipped in waist, and they're watching, one of the movies.
I believe it is Queen Kelly, starring Gloria Stewart.
And this is Gloria Swanson.
Oh, Gloria Swanson, not Gloria Stewart from Titanic.
From Titanic and The Invisible Man. This is the movie that Max von Stroheim directed.
Yes.
Right?
And it was a big old bust.
Well, she has an amazing kind of blow up in this scene. So I want to play this clip, and then we'll talk about her at Paramount.
Still wonderful, isn't it? And no dialogue. We didn't need dialogue. We had faces. There just aren't any faces like that anymore. Maybe one, Garbo. Those idiot producers. Those imbeciles. Haven't they got any eyes? Have they forgotten what a star looks like? I'll show them. I'll be up there again, so help me.
I love that outburst because she's just kind of arguing with herself.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, Joe doesn't say anything. Nobody says anything. She's just like, look how great we were. And then just it turns into like, well, fuck you.
Right? And can we talk about the cinematography in that shot? Is absolute brilliance.
The cigarette smoke through.
The cigarette smoke coming through the light of the projector.
Yep.
Hitting her. Mm-hmm. Just fantastic.
Yes.
It really is fantastic.
And she had a way of acting with her whole body, and she would use her hands and her arms and make these crazy
when she's
flourishy...
grabbing Joe's arm, and she's just like, you can just see these like claws, like her nails just digging into his arms. When Joe is sitting reading the script, and Norma has like her leg up, and her hand is over the side of her leg,
like
and she's just her. Like, it just looks like a claw. That Norma is just this creature.
And she's got that cigarette holder.
Yeah,
that's
that
like a ring.
Yeah,
that's a cool cigarette holder.
That crazy contraption.
I've never seen anything like that, and I've never seen anything like that since.
Yeah.
I don't know. Someone has made one like that, because I would take up smoking if that was the case.
Yeah, the way you can just hold your finger hooked right, like a little hook right in front of you, and just smoke right out of it. Just so cool. Some of the costuming in this movie is insane.
Shout out to Edith Head.
I mean, yeah, Edith Head.
Hollywood legend.
I do remember, I have to bring up that when I first bought the DVD after having rented it, I bought the DVD and I watched it with commentary. And the commentary track is delivered by this like gay movie historian who like this is his favorite movie, and he's kind of everything, because there are scenes when he's just like, what is she wearing? He's just like, what is this thing that she has around her neck? I don't even know what that is. And he's just like commenting on it. And in the documentaries, he's got like one earring in his left ear, and it's a diamond stud. And like, I love that kind of like 90s gay man that had that earring.
Exactly.
But that just shows you the kind of audience that this movie found. Like, we all just love is it the camp? Like, what is it that we just identify so much with Norma?
I think that Norma just speaks to gay men just sort of being disregarded.
Sure.
By people that you really can't fit into society, especially kind of years ago, like decades ago, that you're just sort of on the fringe. And
Yeah.
Norma is someone that lives on the fringe of society in this giant house.
Yeah. Ultimately, she makes her way to Paramount, and we have a really cool scene there. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on. I mean, you get Cecil B. DeMille, you get Max talking about his suite of offices,
right,
that he had decorated in black patent leather.
Yeah, the walls were covered in black patent leather.
What the hell? In the
taking a meeting in that office.
And this is the time of like, I mean, we see DeMille in this scene wearing the puffy director pants and like riding boots.
He just needs a giant megaphone.
Yeah, he's like a caricature of like a movie director.
And again, he always dressed like that.
That's so insane. Like, what is that, a writing thing? Like, what is that? I don't understand that look.
Yeah, so he's wearing choppers and riding boots. And I guess he would also have a riding crop with him.
Oh my God.
Usually. And it was like his thing. He always wore that outfit.
Yeah. And there's like a man in the shots that would stand next to him, and you see it, and he hands them the mic, the God mic that they call it, so that he could just like talk into it, and his voice would be projected around the entire soundstage. And like, it's so crazy that was just somebody's job to hold this God mic and hand it to him when he, when he would call lunch.
What does he call Norma when he first sees her?
Young fella.
Young fella.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually called Gloria Swanson that.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was his way of referring to her, was young fella. And they had that great, the last time I saw you was someplace gay. Remember, we were dancing on tables. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, Lindbergh had just landed in Paris.
That's some like Monty Burns shit right there.
Yeah. So I looked that up because I didn't remember off the top of my head. And Lindbergh landed in Paris in 1927. And
right, so you have like 20 some odd years later.
Mm-hmm. So like 23 about years later. So that's very interesting that was kind of when she was at the top of her game, or that was the last time she saw him. So
right,
kind of waning in her career. And so it's been 23 years since she's been back to Paramount. the interaction at the gate when the security guard is just like, no, we need to like
Jonesy. Jonesy.
We don't have that little bit, but we do have the bit where she meets Mr. DeMille at the door of the stage. He brings her in and sits her down so that he can kind of figure out, because Cecil B. DeMille is kind of like,
why is she here?
What in the hell is she doing here?
Yeah.
Like, what
Right.
what in the hell is she doing here? What does she want, and how do I get rid of her, kind of. And so he sits her down to go figure it out. And that's when we get this scene here.
Hey, Miss Desmond! Miss Desmond! It's me! It's Hawkeye!
Hello, Hawkeye.
Let's get a good look at you!
There's Norma Desmond.
Norma Desmond. Norma Desmond.
Why, I thought she was dead.
How nice to see you.
Welcome home, Mr. You remember me, don't you?
Miss Desmond.
Hello.
She's a wonder.
This is Norman or Element. She's being recognized.
Yeah. You know what
What
it
fawned over.
You know what it reminds me of? I'm sure you probably watched Feud, Betty and Joan.
Yes.
Okay. So in that show, and I guess this was a real thing that Joan Crawford did, was that she would really kind of ingratiate herself with the crew and kind of like get to know everybody. And it, on the first day on whatever happened to Baby Jane, Joan Crawford shows up with personalized little gifts for everybody. And she had like a box of chocolates for this one and a tie for this one. And she made it a point to know everybody's name on set so that she would know all the crew. And, you know, some of the extras in that scene were like, oh, you remember me, don't you? And so it kind of gave me that idea that, you know, that maybe Norma was the kind of actress that kind of did get to know everybody. But yeah, I just kind of had that idea from the way the extras were kind of talking to her about like, oh, don't you remember me? And she's just like, oh, yeah.
Hello,
Hawkeye.
I like that when she backs away the microphone.
And that scene is just, and it's also so, it's endearing. The scene,
Yes.
But it's also kind of sad because everyone that recognizes her are old. Nobody that's young on the movie set cares. It's just all the old people.
right?
But here's where we find out that they were actually interested in
The car.
Oh,
Gag.
Womp womp.
Oh, Gordon Cole, that darn Gordon Cole.
Gordon Cole. Damn him.
Damn, want to get that car. I do want to talk about real quick this shot because this movie is so cinematically amazing. Probably my absolute favorite shot in the entire movie is this shot of the boom microphone coming across and hitting the very tip of her peacock feather in her hat.
She swats it away.
And her looking up and her swatting it away out of disgust for the sound.
Yep.
You know, and such a great. It says so much about the film and her, and yeah, it's so great. Anyway.
Yeah, it is a lovely shot, and it's this crazy old timey, big, giant, unwieldy looking mic that comes sliding in. Yeah, it is. That's really cool. So we did talk before about the two kind of simultaneous New Year's Eve parties, and how kind of sad Norma's. Well, not. I mean, it is sad, but it's just kind of.
Shit gets a little real when I think this is really when Joe's like, oh, she, like, I thought that she was a little nutty, but this bitch cray.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
When, you know, when he's first there reading her script and it's just the two of them, Max wheels out champagne and caviar. So this is kind of like the type of house that you're in. When you're just kind of sitting down having a chat, there's going to be champagne and caviar. So for this New Year's party, she waxes the floor, and she's got this huge dance floor in her ballroom There's this full orchestra. Max is behind the bar, tending bar. And he comes out in this tuxedo that looks so crazy on him. It's like a different person when he walks out in that tuxedo. And she says it. She's like, oh, I love these lines. Look at this. She's just putting her hands all over him in this tux. He looks amazing in this tuxedo.
And I love his response is, don't fool yourself. It's all padding.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's probably really wide shoulder pads, and then he's probably so tight around the waist.
Is he wearing some hip pads?
No, but he might be wearing a girdle though, because that his waist in that his waist in that tuxedo is so small, and his shoulders are super wide. I think he's just referring to the shoulders, right?
Right.
The padding. But yeah, he looks absolutely amazing in this tux, and she comes out in a beautiful dress. But I feel like this outfit on Norma is the most matronly. I feel like she looks a little bit more her age with this is it kind of like a Spanish inspired look that she's pulling off on New Year's?
Kind of her tango outfit.
Yeah, and she's got that crazy diamond tiara with the netting.
Yes. It's like a veil, but also just netting flying around. And he's just oh, and she's like, oh, don't lean back. And he's like, oh, that thing, it's tickling my face. Rips it off. This thing, you don't like it?
Just rips it out of her.
You don't like it? Gone. Yeah.
Tosses it to the floor.
Yeah, for Max to just pick up. And then she's just smashing her hair down because her hair was her hairstyle that night was built around this tiara thing that she's wearing. So she went and ruined it. Does Joe leave just because he's so freaked out at the fact that there's no other guests there? I forget why he ultimately leaves the New Year's Eve party.
She gives him the gold cigarette case.
Oh, sure.
And it's kind of too much. He's now kind of freaked out because it's all he realizes. You remember she says, she has the great line of, now I'm going to get it wrong, but it's don't be afraid to love me of some sort.
Right.
And she slaps him and he's at that point, he's like, I'm out of here.
Yeah. And he leaves and it's raining. It's New Year's Eve. And he makes his way to Betty and the friend's house to have the juxtaposition of their New Year's Eve party, which is young, carefree kids singing Buttons and Bows and drinking cough syrup. They're
right.
They're scissorping at this party.
Scissorping, exactly. Oh boy. And just the concept of anybody would be freaked out if you were going to a fancy party to come to find out you're the only guest.
Yeah.
And all this has been set up. There's an orchestra playing. There's a champagne tower.
She didn't even invite over Buster Keaton.
Even if it was just the Waxworks.
Yeah.
Right.
Isn't it Buster Keaton?
It is.
Yeah.
He's one of them.
Buster Keaton and I can't remember the other two, but yeah, it's a great. These were also silent film actors who hadn't really done anything in a while, so it was
I wasn't familiar with the actress that was part of the group, and I looked her up, and her name is Anna Q. Nilsson. And Anna Q. Nilsson was born in the 1880s. And when you look on her and when you look on her IMDb page, the images look like the kind of movies that she made were full on Main Street USA, put the penny in the machine and turn the crank and you see the Nickelodeon she's fixing her hair in front of a mirror and that's the movie. That's how
was hardly a film.
Yeah. That's how old her the images looked on her IMDb. I was like, wow, Anna Q. Nilsson, you are old. And she looked compared to Norma sitting at that table playing bridge, she looked like an elderly woman. I mean, if she was born in the 1880s, she was probably, you know, in her 70s at that point in 1950. Unless I'm doing my math wrong, which I may be. But yeah.
That sounds right.
Yeah, the two New Year's parties and Norma's party is it's creepy, but it's depressing and all of that. But I mean, nothing kind of gets me more than when Max on the phone tells him that, like,
she's tried to commit suicide.
Yeah. She got into your razors.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's almost like, it's almost his fault because they were his razors and they, you know, there's no doorknobs in the house. There's no locks on any door because the madame.
One of the lines in that scene where he finally comes, you know, he races back to the mansion because she's now slit her wrists.
Mm-hmm.
And he meets Max at the door, and Max is like, "Don't rush up the stairs too fast, because we don't want the musicians to know what happened." And I'm like, "That orchestra is still playing,
they're still there
the whole time. It's still there
for no one.
It's got to be 1 or 2 in the morning at this point."
Yeah, so they know something's going on, regardless of Joe running up the stairs. I loved, you know, earlier in the movie when Joe asks about the door locks and the doorknobs. And what Max tells him, he says, the madame has bouts of melancholy.
Mm-hmm. So
I love that.
So she's tried this before.
Bouts of melancholy. Yeah. I love that. So like, oh, I wish I would just have bouts of melancholy every now and then. I'm just going to call it that.
And that room that he's staying in, which is the husband's room.
Yeah.
The husband's room. And it's so huge and grand.
Yeah.
And it's nuts. It's all this dark wood and this bed that literally looks like it's a football field long. It's huge. And then he looks over and there's no doorknobs. That would be a little disconcerting.
Oh yeah,
it would be a little alarming.
Yeah. It is so tragic when he walks into Norma's room and the camera is set up there. And you can see her on the bed, but you don't see her face. You see her arms wrapped up and her body. But the way the shot is set up, it's so that it's from behind, so you don't see her face, and you see her, her little teeny tiny wrists wrapped up. And the way that Gloria Swanson plays this scene, she's just like, "Don't look at me." It's not the big, grand, over the top Norma. It's very subtle and subdued, and she's embarrassed. Yeah, she's embarrassed. It's crazy. It just really shows that, well, maybe it wasn't all just that one note crazy performance. She has all these layers to this character and to herself and all of that, and it's so sad. But this is where she's just like, she wants him to leave and all of that, and he's mad at her for doing this, for attempting suicide. But the scene ends with him kissing her, and that's when you're just like, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. Maybe not the right time, but they are fucking. It's really interesting, and it's like Joe kind of like, as much as he probably doesn't want to, he just kind of feels guilty for getting to this point, maybe. So,
he's a very sad character. I mean, he's so conflicted.
Yeah,
he's ashamed of himself because he's brought himself. He's allowed himself to get to this point with her. And it's just, and the way that when they do go in for the kiss, the way her claw-like hands kind of grab onto him and pull him into it. She pulls him into her, and it's like, and then the scene dissolves. But that's when you're like, okay, we see what's going on here.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely one of the big themes of this movie is the nature of Hollywood and is the exploitation of people and just how heartless it can be. Joe started this movie kind of wanting to quit Hollywood. He saw this opportunity, and it's just sort of the consequences of him working his way up. Is that now he's just stuck with Norma in this lonely mansion. That it's sort of like a prison for him.
It's really it is a very sad aspect of the story, you know?
Yeah. From here on out, though, it's when we get Joe starting to sneak out at night.
Yeah.
Now he's fully just like, he's stealing the car. I mean, is it stealing? He's like,
right.
You know, but he's fully stealing this car, driving this giant 1930s limousine to Paramount Studios under the cover of night, and working with Betty. But it's not really an affair. She's still engaged to, you know, to her Artie. So it's kind of an emotional affair. You know, she's not really going to leave Artie for Joe. She just is serious about this script opportunity because she doesn't want to be a reader forever. And she knows that she needs to hitch her wagon onto somebody else as a woman, you know, in the studio system, probably to get ahead. So she's trying to get this thing done. He's sneaking out every night so he doesn't just have to deal with these two weirdos like all day long. And when Norma kind of calls him on it, it's like that's when you really see her starting to deteriorate. And those kinds of scenes are just so sad. When she's just like holding on to the bed banister and stuff.
And you have that amazing scene where you have the reveal of Max and what his relationship is to her.
Yes, and this is when it's revealed that he was her director, and he's been writing all of the fan letters. So he's just sort of been kind of keeping her going with these thoughts that she still remembered, too.
And he's her ex-husband.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. One of the 4 ex-husbands. Was he the first one?
No, he's like the 4th.
Yeah.
I think he's like the last husband.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And there's that crazy scene where he pulls in, you know, the car after being out at Paramount, and Max is hiding in the shadows.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Max is not there to expose him. He's just kind of there to tell him, like, be more careful. Because,
right. He's like, you might want to make sure you're, you know, take a different path because she'll be watching the.
Yeah.
You know.
He's not like, ooh, I caught you and I'm going to go tell her. He's like, no, if this is happening, okay, here's how you hide it from her. Because he's more concerned with Norma's well-being. He's not trying to break them up. He's not trying to, you know, expose Joe or whatever. He's just like, you need to be more careful because she's going to find out, which is very interesting on Mac's part. He's not coming at this from like jealousy or anything. He just is still in love with Norma.
It's all about keeping her fragile, you know, her fragile mind going, you know.
And he knows that she's just sort of on the edge, that she just needs a little, like the littlest thing could push her over the edge.
Yeah.
Right.
So she calls Joe on, you know, going out at night. We kind of talked a little bit about her on the phone calls with Betty, because Betty's been trying to contact Joe at home, but the phone numbers that she has, like, either Max jumps on the line and says, stop calling here, or, you know, Norma answers and she gives these like creepy these creepy responses. Right. I love Betty's kind of like, she is a young, unmarried girl on the go. She's a career girl. And so she lives in like this girls' boarding house kind of a situation.
Yeah, she's got a roommate.
Yeah. But isn't there like a woman, like some marm that like lives on the floor? So I kind of assumed it to be like a boarding house because I feel like there was like an older woman in there somewhere.
It probably, I mean, in that time of frame, she either lived in an apartment with, or it was like a women's hotel.
Yeah.
Where you live, and that actress who plays her roommate who's like, "Hey, Betty, it's that weird woman on the phone for you again."
Yeah. And this girl has a car because this girl drives Betty to the house. They get the address and she's just like, all right, let's go. That weird woman's house.
She looks at this address. Oh, I want to check out this house.
Yeah.
Right. And there's that great line that Max has where he says, Betty's been calling looking for Joe. And Norma's like, who was on the phone? And Max says, it was someone looking for a stray dog. Our phone number must be very close to the phone number of the pound. And it's
Shade.
Telling. It's super shade. It's so telling on what he thinks of Joe.
Yeah.
Like, here's the stray dog.
I didn't even think of that. I just thought that was so funny when he said our phone number must be very similar to the one the pound. Betty makes her way to the house and it's just like, I'm out.
She's like, oh, this is what this guy's situation is.
Yeah.
This explains a lot.
But I love that she's ready when she kind of tells Joe, like she's ready to just be like, whatever this was, let's just go. This is cool, but right. I was never here. I've never been to this house, and neither have you. Mm-hmm. Let's go.
And Betty does have feelings for him, too.
She's giving him an out, right? Like,
yeah.
She's giving him an out to just be like, just come back with me. Forget this.
But I love that, and it's interesting that he's kind of come to the realization that wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And he pretty much says to her, is like, you've heard of these kind of setups before. The older rich woman and the young guy, and he pretty much calls himself out as a gigolo.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yep. Yeah. Does he just?
It's a sad scene,
It is his kind of. He's just kind of like,
and he's just ready to throw in the towel and just go back to his town in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Just to completely leave Hollywood in general.
Yeah, I think he's ready to just kind of give it up at this point.
And Norma can't take it. She has to stop him at any means necessary, and she ends up, shooting him in the back. And he falls into the pool.
You just get, the camera starts to pull away as he's walking out the door, because he's just like, I'm going to leave. So, yeah, when we see Norma's tiny little body walk out the front door.
Waving this gun
around. When she first tells him, though, she's like, I bought a revolver.
I love her little lady's revolver, too.
This is crazed, wild, like, I bought a gun. Bought a gun, Joe. Yeah, so she just shoots him as he's walking away. And so this is where it cuts to, like, the present. It's no longer the flashback. And we get, like, the most iconic scene of this movie.
Yeah, it's so pretty much the entire industry is at Norma's house. We get a wonderful cameo by gossip columnist
Hedda
Hopper, dictating her story.
Which, Hedda Hopper, I feel like, I don't know how I feel about her. After seeing, like, the Dalton Trumbo movie, where she was, like, spearheaded, like, blacklisting, like, all these,
She was definitely pretty cunty.
Yeah, she was not exactly, like, the best, type of person. But, she's in this movie. She started as an actress, so they put her on screen, and her face says a lot. Speaking of acting with one look.
And she was the great portrayal of her by Judy Davis in Feud.
Yes.
So good.
Yes, indeed.
So good.
We love Judy Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Should we play?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna play that clip of the scene of the movie.
Lights! Are you ready, Norma?
What is the scene? Where am I?
This is the staircase of the palace.
Oh, yes. Yes. Down below, they're waiting for the princess. I'm ready.
All right. Cameras. Action. So they were turning after all. Those cameras. Life, which can be strangely merciful, had taken pity on Norma Desmond. The dream she had clung to so desperately had enfolded her.
This, like, crazy little, like, dance, the way she, like, comes down the staircase.
When she's looking in the mirror, she's like pulling an Alyssa Edwards when she's doing some faces in the mirror.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. So she fully, now in her head, this is Salome.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
She's making the movie.
Yeah, she's completely lost it at this point.
Yeah. But yeah, this is where, it ends and we're just kind of left with the tragedy of, of Norma, and are they just going to put her in, in a loony bin for the rest of her days? Was it, temporary insanity?
Maybe she'll get like a more of a glamorous wing of the insane asylum.
Right.
I hope so.
Yeah, and what I love about that scene and the way it's directed of her coming down the staircase is how she's the only one who's moving. Everyone else is frozen.
Yeah.
And she's doing that to the amazing Franz Waxman score of her coming down that, when she's coming down the staircase, and she's doing that kind of dance of the seven veils down the staircase. And everyone is just kind of in shock and awe of what's happening. And you have the crazy justification of Max kind of stepping in and directing the scene.
Yeah.
Trying to, and the whole idea that it's to get her downstairs so that they can put her in a, put her into a paddy wagon.
Yeah. So the men with the white nets, the big butterfly nets can.
Exactly.
And Norma's just sort of this monster and creature that Hollywood has created.
Yeah.
Like, the industry did this to her.
I do love Max taking control of the newsreel cameras and calling action and calling for lights and all of that. And you're right, to give Norma this idea of okay, this is Salome. You're on the set. We're doing this for you. And yeah, to lure her out, because she hasn't moved from that boudoir, like vanity, even with the cops questioning her and everything. Yeah, it's a tragic ending to like an amazing movie. These, like, the performances all around, everything, like you said, the score, the costumes, the direction. It's like, this movie is insane.
Just the tone of the movie of, this is a movie made by Hollywood that is not really flattering. And that you could just see when this came out, you always hear stories that Louis B. Mayer was just furious at Weiler, at anybody that made this movie, of how could you do this to our industry? It's like, this is just sort of like, you're breaking the illusion of movies. And that was just
it shows the seedy underbelly of what,
Yeah. Do you think that could have cost her the Oscar?
That's interesting, because it was All About Eve.
Yep.
And All About Eve is very much a movie that's it's the same subject matter, but both tackle it very differently, too.
Right. One's about, movies or the film industry. The other one's about theater.
Theater, yeah.
But just sort of actresses, when they get older, they just get disregarded by their peers.
Exactly. Yeah. It was definitely an interesting Oscar season, because I think with Gloria Swanson, she was kind of like the fan favorite.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, she had the arc of the comeback, the return. I hate that word.
It's going to say it's not a comeback, it's a return.
Maybe the actors vote would have been Bette Davis. But all I'm saying is, if I am a voting member, I'm filling out my ballot, and I see Best Actress, I am probably marking down Gloria Swanson. That is who I'm voting for. What about you?
Oh, completely. Yeah. I mean, you watch both of those films, All About Eve and then Sunset Boulevard. And yes, they're both amazing performances, but for me, it would be Gloria Swanson's performance that should have won.
I think Sunset Boulevard goes down a lot easier than All About Eve, especially to modern audiences. It's a quicker movie. It's briskly paced. It's just go, go, go. Whereas All About Eve is a little bit more of a leisurely paced movie. It's a little bit more dated, and they're both about like showbiz, but the theater industry is something that's a little bit more like you kind of have to have your foot in the door of that world to kind of understand or even really care a lot about it, whereas the movie industry, just kind of everybody just kind of knows, and it's got enough little nods and hints to Hollywood and all that to have a more everyday average audience member to latch on to. And so I think Sunset Boulevard, for those reasons, goes down a lot easier, is a lot more palatable today than All About Eve. And I love Bette Davis, and I love her performance in that movie, but I think Norma Desmond is just such a standout role.
Yeah.
And who won that year? Judy Holliday for Born Yesterday. I've never seen the original Born Yesterday. I've seen the remake with Melanie Griffith.
Melanie Griffith.
Haven't you ever seen Born Yesterday?
From the 90s?
From the 90s with Melanie Griffith and Don Johnson?
Oh, yeah. Oh.
And do you know who the other actress was in the category that people forget about? She was the number 5th spot. It was the Baroness from The Sound of Music. It was Eleanor Parker in a women's prison movie called Caged.
Oh, my God.
Huh.
Yeah, so, wow. I mean, feel like Eleanor Parker kind of gets, like, swept under the rug when people are talking about the 1951 Oscar year.
Sure.
But, yeah, she was fully in that category. And everyone was gagged that they split the vote and gave it to the ingenue.
Yeah, it's like they canceled each other out almost, because it was you have these two powerhouses that have been around, and then you've got Judy Holliday.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of the year that Emma Stone won for La La Land, because I feel like the actor's vote was either Natalie Portman and Jackie or Isabella Huppert for Elle, and it just sort of split it, and it sent it to Emma Stone.
To the popcorn movie.
Oh, yeah.
To the popcorn populist movie.
Yeah. And there's many, many years of Oscar seasons where that's happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just one of those things where you're just like, oh, man, like it would have been... Like if the stars would have aligned, it was just her year, for her entire career, all of the movies that she had done, and to have this return, role, it just would have been.
And it's like, Bette Davis went back twice.
Yeah.
And famously lost to Anne Bancroft for The Miracle Worker, and we know how that went.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
She already had 2.
But she wanted 3. No one had 3 yet.
I love how Bette Davis is just like, yeah, I wanted 3. She's just like, what? I wanted another one.
No one had done it yet.
Oh, man. Well, I mean,
Do we leave anything out when talking about this movie?
Dennis, do you have any final thoughts that we can wrap up on Sunset Boulevard? Anything we haven't touched on, or just why this movie endures for all of us?
Kind of why does it relate to the queer experience too?
Yeah.
I feel like a lot's been written on that for that reason.
Well, definitely it's the outsider or the forgotten or the misfit toy aspect of the story of Norma Desmond. And then, and there's so many parallels to, gay relationships, and that you have relationships of older and younger, and then you have the whole storyline of Max.
Yeah.
And if you look at his whole storyline, it's really fucked up. Yeah. And it's that kind of it's all these parallels to gay relationships, I think, that we see. Definitely. The camp value of just an over the top female character.
Yeah.
And I was going to mention with the stairway scene at the very end, two of my favorite things in it is that she breaks the fourth wall,
mm-hmm.
and she looks right into the camera and says, she's thanking the director and thanking, everyone for being helpful. And then she looks right at the camera and breaks the fourth wall and says, "And to all you beautiful people out there in the dark." And that's so, it's shocking and amazing. And I love that she really doesn't get her close up at the end.
Yeah.
Because Billy Wilder decided to go to a dissolve just as it's about to be really a close up. He dissolves and she doesn't get her close up.
Oh,
that says a lot.
Tragic.
Yep.
Oh man.
Totally tragic.
Oh man. That's crazy. Wow. I love this movie.
Perfectly sums it up. I'm glad that we finally got to a classic Hollywood movie. I can't wait to do more.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it goes without saying that we strongly recommend listeners to watch this movie if you have not seen it.
And like what Pete said, I think what's so great about revisiting this movie is that it ages really well.
Yeah.
All of the themes of its movies of the movie are still topical today. Like, I mean, I feel like even though actresses like Nicole Kidman, Jennifer Aniston still work in their 50s, but I mean, they are the elite group of A-listers that can.
Yeah, you can count on your hand maybe 5.
That, for the most part, when you get to your later 30s, that's just sort of what happens.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. I mean...
And also, like you mentioned about the pacing, that it just goes down really easy, and it's cut like a modern movie.
Yeah.
And that says a lot for an old Hollywood movie.
Yeah.
That it has that brisk of pace.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I love it.
So good.
Strongly recommend. Dennis, this was so fun.
Yeah, we'll have you back.
Yeah, I had a great time.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for having me.
You're very, very welcome. We would love to have you come back and do another movie. We'll think about which one to come back and talk about. But we're gonna play our little sign off music while we say goodbye to our guest Dennis Griffin. Don't let the smoke get you down in the apocalypse. Bye.
That's a cough. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, you too. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening, everybody. That was so much fun.
Good episode.
Yes, indeed. Great episode. We've come to the time in our show for our Patreon.
This is like a new segment. I love it.
Yes, indeed. This is a new segment. This is really fun. We're just going to say hello and thank you to all of our wonderful patrons. We have just started our Patreon page. Let's say thanks to everybody first, and then we'll talk about how you can support us on Patreon. We would like to thank Mitchell Ralston, Rufino Kabang, Christine Asher, Nick Thomas, John Miller, Jessica something, and Melinda and Jim Shirley. Thank you so much, everybody, for
Y'all rock.
supporting our little show. You guys are amazing. We would love if you listeners could support us on Patreon. We are at www.patreon.com/movies that made us gay.
We're getting a cute little newsletter to send out.
Yes.
For the donors.
Yes, the newsletter is really fun. If you join at the $5 a month level, you can get the newsletter. We are starting out monthly, but really I think I'm going to send it twice a month because it's super fun to put together. It's got some extra movie reviews, movies that we've gone out and seen, some what we're watching on TV. I'm writing up a review for Cobra Kai that I just finished, and I love it, and I can't shut up about it, so everybody's going to get my review of Cobra Kai.
He hasn't shut up about it.
I know.
I can vouch for that.
You're going to get some entertainment news, a really fun section about some gossip.
Honey.
I love the entertainment, honey. There's going to be some great gossip in there and lots of shade. And you're also going to get sneak peeks of upcoming episodes. This is all in the newsletter, by the way.
Yeah.
This is all just in the newsletter.
I pretty much have our October lineup almost done.
Yep.
Like, I think that I might be missing, like, one movie, and that's it.
Oh, dang. So, yeah. So, you're going to see all the movies that are upcoming. And then separately from that, if you join us at the $10 a month level, that is like one extra value meal from Jack in the Box.
Yeah.
Just one. If you do that, you can get our additional commentary track episodes. Watch the movie with us.
Which reminds me, we need to record another one soon.
Yes, indeed. We're still thinking about the second Watch With Us movie for September. You're going to get 2 a month, right? You're going to get 2 a month.
You can slide into Patreon with some recommendations if you'd like to.
Yeah, totally. If you want to watch a specific movie with us, you can give us a shout out on Patreon.
We got some good recommendations from a Patreon member. I think it was Christine.
Yes, indeed. It was Christine Asher.
She had some good movies.
She had some great movie recommendations. Some of them I would love to do sooner than later. We'll check those out in the future. But yeah, check out our Patreon and support us if you can. I know right now everybody, like, if you got 2 nickels to rub together, hold on to them. So thank you so much if you have an extra couple to throw our way.
We appreciate it a lot.
We really appreciate it. But it's all going directly into us keeping this equipment functioning, keeping our internet speeds going at a rate that can, get people on Skype calls and FaceTime calls and everything that we need to do to have guests every week for you. And keeping the show on the air. So, yeah, keep doing that. And we would also love it if you would rate and review us on iTunes.
Really helps with those iTunes metrics.
Yes, indeed. It helps a lot. We want to get on New and Noteworthy. We want to get on the film reviews page. We want to get on all that. And that directly contributes to that. If you give us a 5-star rating and if you write us a review. So go ahead and do that on Apple Podcasts. And while you're at it, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at
MTMUG Pod on Twitter and Movies That Made Us Gay on Facebook and Instagram.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So go out and check us out. Look us up. Plenty of new episodes coming your way. Scott, do we have anything else before we go off with this last clip?
I don't think so.
I think you're right. I think it's time to say goodnight for the evening. We will leave you with Norma.
I can't go on with the scene. I'm too happy. Mr. DeMille, do you mind if I say a few words? Thank you. I just want to tell you all how happy I am to be back in the studio, making a picture again. You don't know how much I've missed all of you. And I promise you I'll never desert you again. Because after Salome, we'll make another picture and another picture. You see, this is my life. It always will be. There's nothing else. Just us. And the cameras. And those wonderful people out there in the dark. All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.